everyone, Pam DuBois, Real Estate TV. Today, I have to tell you, I'm so excited, super grateful to have with me the awesome Sheryl Anjanette. Sheryl is a best-selling author, international speaker, transformational coach, success coach, and mind guide. And Sheryl, thank you so much for being with us today. I know you're going to give us all the other titles that you have because you have so many of them, and we're so grateful to have you. Please, first, share all your titles that you have.
Well, I would say they're not so much titles, but they are just sort of the deep dive I've done. So I have the 30 years of business experience, both as a C-suite executive and an entrepreneur 3 times. But then I also did the deep dive into the healing arts. So I'm an integrative hypnotherapist, which simply means I've studied and I practice multiple modalities of hypnotherapy, NLP master. I have a clinical certification in stress, anxiety, and emotional regulation. That's a big one. And then, of course, the cognitive behavioral neurosciences. So I have an advanced certification in that.
That is absolutely.
And I would say, Pamela, all that is just to say that I like to have a nice wide tool belt.
Yeah. Oh, you certainly do. My goodness. And I know one of your expertise is imposter syndrome. So, and let's talk a little bit about that. And first of all, I guess, what is imposter syndrome, right?
Such an important question because so many people are a little confused about that.
Yeah.
So here's what it is. Imposter syndrome is a psychological pattern where someone feels like they're not good enough in spite of their accomplishments. So this is not just a beginner's phenomenon. This does not mean you're actually an imposter or even that other people think you're an imposter. It's what we feel inside. It's like this internalized anxiety that we might be found out as a fraud or a phony, even though we're doing great things out there, even though we have the degrees and the certifications, we have the real accomplishments.
Yeah.
But we still feel that. So there's a disconnect. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it totally makes sense. And one of the things also I was thinking about is like how we actually compare ourselves to people that's in our, same field, and someone that maybe that's been doing it a lot longer than we've been doing it. But all of a sudden we look at this person and go, oh my gosh, they're so great at what they're doing, not taking into consideration how long they've actually been doing it, right?
Yeah, I call that compare despair or comparisonitis.
Okay.
And it's not that comparison is a bad thing. There's this concept I talk about in my book called the healthy zone. And in the healthy zone, comparison, fear, doubt, all these things that we think are so misaligned and so maladaptive can actually be healthy. They can be healthy as long as they are adaptive. So comparison itself isn't a bad thing, but when we have the compare despair and we're, even if we're comparing ourselves to someone that hasn't been doing it as long as we have, but maybe they're doing it differently or better, but we ruminate.
Right. So big question here. How does one get over imposter syndrome?
Yeah. So that's what I've kind of dedicated my business to in my life right now, because so many people, I was so frustrated. I lived with this for decades, and I'm accomplished. I've had the successful companies. I've been the C-suite executive. I'm the leadership. I have I have the list.
Yeah.
But I still felt like I wasn't good enough. I always, was comparing myself. I was doing all this people-pleasing behavior, and it was affecting my relationships and the perfectionism and the savior stuff. And so I said, okay, what's out there? How do I get over this? Because I'm really stubborn. And what I saw was that people were saying, oh, just do this one thing, or just feel the fear and do it anyway. And that's how you do it. Or, they had some really good techniques.
Yeah.
But it wasn't a whole solution. It was like, okay, maybe that's going to make me feel better for a while, but that's not a cure. That's not a solution. So the way you get past imposter syndrome is to do the deep dive to the inside. There's some really early programming, and it's buried, and it's usually, maybe almost always, not what we think it is.
Yeah.
Or it's not fully what we thought it was. It's stuff that happened early on in our lives and then kind of got layered in that made us feel like we weren't good enough.
Yeah.
Or worthy or deserving. Or like our voice didn't matter, we didn't matter. And so even though on the outside, we're putting on that confidence suit, we're out there, we're like, I've got this. I've got this. There's still
Right.
something inside,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Right.
It's there.
So we have to do, so the answer is an inside out, a holistic approach, inside out, outside in. We have to reprogram and we have to repattern. So we reprogram that early programming that's dealing with the subconscious mind.
Yeah.
And we repattern our actual brain, because our brain creates patterns for beliefs and thoughts and self-talk as much as it does for behaviors. Does that make sense?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely makes sense. And I know you actually discuss all of this and most of this in your book that just actually launched, right?
Yes.
Tell us about the book and
Yes.
the name of the book and how one gets,
Yes.
a hold of the book.
Okay, so here's the book. The book is called The Imposter Lies Within. Silence Your Inner Critic, Tame Your Fear, Unleash Your Badassery. And it's available now on Amazon, I think Barnes and Noble possibly. It's just a week old, so it is a bestseller. I'm very proud of that, but it's only been out as we record this. So by the time I think it airs, it will have been out a bit longer. And the premise of the book is that you can live imposter free. You can get past this. It's a very full book. There are 20 chapters, 20 exercises, 4 stages, because I actually mind mapped this whole journey from awareness to insight, to alignment, to integration. So I'll show you what that looks like. It's a mind map journey. Can you see that okay?
Yeah. The journey, alignment. I see alignment, awareness. Yeah. So it actually goes through and you can actually map it out as you go through. Is that right?
Yeah, you can. And you can follow the exercises. And then I'm also have a program where, if people need more help and they really want to have somebody, almost like have a personal trainer, so the treadmill isn't just sitting in the house being an expensive clothes hanger.
Yeah.
But if they want to actually have somebody help them with the group, I do have that as well.
That's great. That's great. So you do personal coaching plus the group coaching.
I do. Yeah.
And NLP, explain to us NLP. I hear NLP all the time. What is NLP?
So NLP is another way, it's another approach to help get to some of those root causes. But more importantly, what NLP does, it's neuro-linguistic programming is what it stands for.
Got it. Okay.
So when we think of linguistics, we think of language, right? We think of the spoken word. So the spoken word is important, but truly our language is a lot of nonverbal. So the language for the subconscious mind is also pictures, it's images, it's the way we have little movies that run in our head. The stories, you talk about story all the time. Neuro-linguistic programming is very tied to the stories, but our internal stories, right? The stories, the self-talk that goes between our ears. And so with neuro-linguistic programming techniques, we can very quickly transform story in our head, images, the weight that we give things very, very rapidly through some techniques. And so what I often do is I'll integrate these. Sometimes I'm just working with NLP techniques. Sometimes I'm just working with hypnotherapy. And sometimes when somebody's in hypnotherapy, and again, that's just really kind of that trance state where you might be engrossed in a good book or watching a movie. We go into trance all day long naturally. And it's just working with a guided hypnotherapist who's not necessarily making suggestions for you, but helping you find the things and transmute and transform and making sure you don't go back into any trauma if it's a good person, a good therapist. I don't believe in going back into trauma. I believe we can transmute and transform that without re-traumatizing ourselves or reliving it. So you use a guide like you would if you climb Mount Everest. That's what I always say. That's the analogy. And so I use this. So sometimes we'll go into hypnotherapy and then we'll use some NLP techniques because that's where the subconscious mind is really listening and open. And we can get rid of those false beliefs, those false narratives, and we can put in the ones that you want.
Yeah. That's great. So you don't believe in going back to the inner child?
Oh,
Is
I
it-
do.
You do?
I
Okay.
do. I do a lot of inner child work almost always, not every time, but generally speaking, we're always revisiting our inner child at different ages and different stages.
Mhm.
Actually, my book was a not number one bestseller, but bestseller in the inner child category.
Oh,
And
wow.
I do a lot of rooms on, and I speak a lot about inner child healing. So very, very important. What I was talking about is when somebody has experienced a trauma, big T or little t,
Uh-huh.
there's a real fear of having to go back and re-experience that. And so when we go in, we never go back into the moment, into the trauma, but we can go before it. We can go above it. We can go
Okay.
after it. We can see it like you'd be watching a movie.
Okay.
You have some emotion, but you're not in it. You're safe. And
Right.
so it's a very safe way to reset that.
Wow.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes.
Yeah. I'd love to
We-
see what that's all about. I'm with you there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Almost everyone is. Almost everyone is. And sometimes we don't even know it. So we're having this sabotage come up, self-sabotage.
Yeah.
And we don't know it's mysterious. We don't know where it's coming from.
Yeah.
I mean, I lived the beautiful proverbial upper middle class life. I had two parents that loved me, and I would have never been somebody that you would have thought would have fear of abandonment. And yet that played over and over and over in my life until I was able to catch why. And it was just a meaning that I'd given a certain behavior that my father had, who was a wonderful man, loving man. He had a certain behavior of leaving the house to cool off anytime he'd get upset,
Yeah.
and driving, and just seeing him leave
Got it.
in
Wow.
anger,
Yeah.
like, or frustration, or just tense.
Yeah.
I had this deeply embedded from childhood fear of abandonment, and it affected my entire life until I caught it. But
Wow.
at a conscious level, you would have never known that.
Right.
I could never have guessed that.
No, not at all. I mean, because that's not something that's major. That's just him going out to drive and getting away for
Yeah.
a little bit, but it affected you.
Yeah. And
Wow.
it wasn't even directed at me, so it really wasn't a trauma. So
Yeah.
that's why I say I have so many stories from clients, but we can get to that. And we do some of this in group as well,
Mhm.
through the journey, the Overcome Imposter Syndrome. I call it the OIS 360 journey, because it really is a whole person, whole life. Let's just get past this.
Yeah. That's incredible. Wow. You are a wealth of knowledge. My goodness. Thank you so much for being here with us. Any other additional information you want to share with us as we wrap up?
Well, I would say if you decide that you'd like to get the book, there's something that a lot of people have found very, very helpful. I have a framework for understanding how imposter syndrome shows up. And
Okay.
it includes 7 archetypes. So those are all really laid out in the book. So I would encourage anybody that's interested to really read it from beginning to end, because it does stack up. But just so you know, there's some very unique elements here. It's really not just another imposter syndrome book. And I do have a quiz. So if anybody were to go to my website, SherylAnjanette.com, and they'd like to take the quiz, it will give you your score. It will tell you what your imposter syndrome score is. Not to say, oh, it's good or bad. It's really just to give you a starting point, to say, okay, this is real. This is showing up for me. I would have never thought that's the behavior that would go back to this feeling of not good enough, the people pleasing, or the perfectionism, or the, superhero. All
Right.
these, there are a lot of these. So it's a great way to have a starting point.
Okay. That's awesome. So your Instagram handle and your
Yes.
LinkedIn, Facebook handle, share with us.
Yes, everything's really easy to find. It's Sheryl Anjanette, Sheryl with an S, Anjanette, ANJANETTE. So you really can find me almost everywhere, just if you search under @Sheryl Anjanette.
Okay. Okay. Awesome. We are so blessed to have you. And thank you so
Thank
much
you.
for all this information. you guys, please reach out to Sheryl if you need anything and get her book. You know, I got your book, but I got the audio. So I'm going to go back and get the hard copy because I really want the hard copy because it's easier to actually, like you were saying, you know, you can go through it and write notes and things like that, which is good. So
yeah. So when you do that, yes, write notes. Yeah. I mean, I like to have both. I like an audio or but it's nice to have the hardback or the paperback.
Right. The audio you can listen, while you're driving in the car or cleaning the house or whatever. But absolutely, you guys reach out to Sheryl. She's absolutely incredible, and we're grateful to have her. And if you guys are thinking about doing videos for your business, reach out to us, Dream Real Estate TV, and we're here to help. But we're always thankful and grateful that you're here with us. Have a blessed day. Blessings, everyone, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.